Welcome back to the Sequence Strength S&C Coaches React. This week's episode, or this current episode, is on Harry Aikens, or Aikens, I'm not sure how you say that. He's a British sprinter. He primarily features in 100 meter relays as part of a team. Obviously, he doesn't do them all by himself. He has a 100 meter sprint, which is 10.08 seconds, which is pretty fucking fast. The world record, I think, is 9.58 seconds. Incredibly fast human being. There's a lot of training footage of Harry, so it's a good example of a sprinter. So we've done boxers before, hippodrome cyclists. Who else did we do? All backs in the gym. So another kind of diverse range of training from Harry. So it should be some good examples. So let's get into it. So first up, we have Harry's own YouTube channel, and he has Back to the Gym - Back to the Basics. So this is just a little training vlog from not too long ago, I think sometime late summer. So a couple of different stuff in here. So let's have a look. Okay, so first up, we've got Harry doing skipping before he does any training. So this is something we've talked about so much recently, right? We talked in our podcast, a couple of our members' lectures, where people just don't do enough actual warm-up before training. Specifically, strength training athletes are absolute murder for this. Other athletes are a little bit better. They're a little bit more in the habit of doing some kind of physical activity, some kind of aerobic activity to increase core body temperature. But this is a great example of what you should be doing before a gym session. Regardless if you're a real athlete or a strength athlete, you should be doing some kind of aerobic work to warm up properly, to actually warm up before you get training.
Yeah, I think there's added advantages as well to a sprinter doing skip work or like those really short rebound work. One of the key factors to being good at sprinting is ankle stiffness and knee stiffness. And just like standard single under, double under skips are going to be really, really good for building that kind of tension in your Achilles tendon, your like biotensegrity around the joint of the ankle and the knee.
So then he's moving on to some mobility work or soft tissue work. So again, this is something we talk about. Usually people spend too long in here and then not enough on the previous part, which is the actual warm-up. So people just kind of skip to this and then use the movement as a way of warming up, which is not a good thing to do. So this is a good example of someone warming up properly. Also, if you warm up properly, if you do actual, you increase the kind of temperature of your muscles, it makes them a lot more malleable and a lot easier to actually eliminate issues and roll out issues as such. Okay, coming into the session, we've got Harry doing some hang power cleans. Any comments about hang power cleans, Fitz?
I really like them for athletes, particularly for sprinters and for anyone who's trying to build like really good rate of force development or like really good power outputs. You can make them heavy enough whereby you're getting into that like appropriate range of intensity where you're going to be working on power. The other thing with a hang power clean is like, even though Harry's technique is quite good, for a standard athlete, even with like relatively low amounts of coaching or maybe very little coach contact, you can get a hang power clean to look quite good and to be very effective without a huge amount of time invested in getting good at them.
So Harry seems to be warming up with some snatch grip deadlifts. He mentions in the video that he's just doing this as a warm up. I'm not particularly for or against this. It's just literally a warm up. Ideally, he'd be warming up with just actual hang power cleans, but maybe it's something he just enjoys doing. So a couple of things probably think you'll notice here if you're a weightlifter is he's using straps on the hang power cleans. Given that Harry seems to have power cleaned at least 171 kilos from the floor, I'm inclined to kind of forgive the use of hang power cleans for most people. Ideally, for a vast majority of people, obviously Harry's a professional athlete, so he probably has a lot of experience. He seems to be doing cleans for at least a decade or more, judging by the oldest footage on YouTube. So he has a lot of experience with it, but for most people watching, if you're going to do hang power cleans, I definitely stay away from using straps, especially lasso straps on hang power cleans. So obviously the main reason you'd be doing power cleans or hang power cleans is you would be doing rate of force development training, so producing as much force as you can as fast as possible, which obviously is the whole goal of sprinting. Harry seems to be able to move sufficient weight that he'll actually get some kind of positive benefit from this. And then for the hang power cleans, you get a little bit of hamstring training.
Yeah. Just probably a point to touch on, Gurf, is why people shouldn't be using straps if they're doing hang power cleans or like any sort of clean, really. You're just putting yourself in a bit more danger. So like the danger is you make a rep or you overcommit to a rep you're about to fail and you're unable to bail the bar effectively. And people think it's not going to be an issue, or they're like, oh, I'm experienced enough, or I've done enough reps, or I'm strong enough, and this weight is light enough. Like, that's something that's always quoted as like, oh, this was only 80 kilos and I can power clean 120 kilos. Like, not being able to bail a bar very, very quickly in those like Olympic lifting situations can be quite catastrophic. Like, double wrist breaks are not uncommon in failing clean. So like, especially with a lasso strap, like something like an easy sew strap or just a single length, you can bail a bit easier. But especially with a lasso where there's multiple loops around the bar, you're not going to be able to bail the bar, and those elbows can just come in contact, and you kind of have you're between a rock and a hard place essentially.
Okay, so next up we've got some kind of quad specific or pretty decent, very, very good quality front squats. So Harry seems to be at something like 120 kilos here. There's a video of him doing at least 190, so he's obviously very, very, very strong at front squats. So he seems to be working up for quality number of reps, 4 to 5 sets, so nothing crazy high.
A particularly nice thing about his front squat is like, he's a kind of wide stance, so like shoulder width with his stance, and his knees are going out to the side. Like, I think particularly when athletes start front squatting, and athletes who are as quad dominant or who have as much quad development as Harry would have, they tend to just go like all feet forward, so or all knees forward, and they get very little like glute or posterior chain recruitment in the squat. Whereas if you watch Harry's front squat from behind there, you can see like knees are tracking out. He's getting a lot of like hip recruitment during it, and it's just working towards kind of general athletic development instead of just quad development.
And I'm a huge fan of any man front squatting who's an athlete in Romileo 2s, to be fair.
Absolutely. The best shoe and weight.
Okay, so next up we've got some barbell, so weighted barbell squats. So the kind of initially original research in these from like Vershansky and it's kind of Soviets, they would have recommended these for some athletes, some periods of time. But again, obviously these are incredibly light for Harry, but it looks like now the latest research, and I suppose kind of the most kind of common hypothesis, we've mentioned it a few times in different videos, but it's like the dynamic body weight hypothesis. So basically the lower limbs in particular are designed to put out the most amount of power at the athlete's body weight. So unweighted these would be a better example for someone like Harry. Also, problem with these as well is that doing these after he squats and power cleans is going to make him slower, and you want to be doing these as fast as possible. And if you're fatigued, you're obviously not going to be able to do them as fast as possible. So the speed of the movement is what determines what kind of muscle fibers are activated. So if Harry's any little bit slower on these, he's probably training muscle fibers that are not ideal for his. So we talked about in a previous video with bobsledders, type 2X were the highest in, elite level sprinters, and they're very, very susceptible to being changed to type 2A fibers, which again are still fast fibers, but they're not as fast as the type 2X in terms of contractions. So for these, if you were doing these as a sprinter, exercise selection here in order of when you're doing them in the session would make more sense if you did these first in the session, then move to his hang power cleans, or you do one or the other, and then finally slow strength or kind of absolute strength stuff after sort of front squats.
And that's a question we get asked a lot, is that you'll have somebody who might have a certain weakness, or they're trying to push a certain strength a bit more, so they might want to up their back squat while still training for like a throwing discipline, or up their back squat while they're training for like sprinting, and they'll try and do their back squats first in the session to put more priority on them. Like Asgarth said, like faster movements come first, higher skill movements come first, and then you do the other work afterwards. Like, don't try and treat it like a priority based system where if you're really focusing on one thing, go and do that first. Like, look at the actual physiology behind the movement, or the speed of the movement, or the skill level of the movement, and then plan your training around that.
So he's moved on here. So in the video, he's moved on to single leg. Incredibly impressive single leg hops. Judging by height of that, that's at least 3 feet, judging by that, which is incredible. My only problem with this, again, is like the order of selection of where these are in the session don't make a whole lot of sense. Well, not a whole lot of sense, but they do better early on our session, or even in a completely separate session, ideally, or potentially in the morning or a different day. Single leg hops as well onto concrete as a lead athlete. While again, he's obviously incredibly experienced, and I'm sure he knows what he's doing, it's just not something I would like to see a very valuable, highly precious elite athlete of mine doing, is if I had someone like that.
Yeah, I think people get a bit confused if they're not dealing with like a professional athlete. Most of the job of a strength and conditioning coach for professional athletes is like facilitate them doing their sport as much as possible. Your second job then is facilitating them training as effectively as possible. And then your third job is strength and conditioning development to optimize their sport. But like your numero uno, your main focus is make sure they don't break while they're playing their sport.
Yeah. If at any point during your coaching of those as an SCA coach, they get injured and they can't do their sport, you have fundamentally failed as your main job, and that's make sure they don't get hurt.
Because I think you'll hear people talking about who are like doing some coaching, or they want to get into coaching, or they're new to coaching, and they'll talk about, oh, if I had an American football player, I'd get them to do this squat program, or I'd want them to squat 280 kilos to a box before they ever go and do anything else. And it's like it's just not that simple when the person is a professional athlete or trying to become a professional athlete. You can't break them. Like, it's not your decision. You're there to do a very specific job.
Okay, so next session we're looking at is light gym session with Aikines-Aryeetey. So this is from the 11th of October 2016, and it's on his YouTube. So I think it gives a nice little selection, or a broader selection, of some exercises Harry's using, right? So first up, we have some trap bar deadlifts. So these are I don't know why, right? But I kind of do know why, I suppose. So trap bar deadlifts are very, very popular with a lot of non-strength sport athletes, because it's an easy one to load up the weight, and technique is very, very hard to get wrong in them. The only problem with them is they're not particularly useful. So if you are trying to do like conventional deadlifts, so if you're trying to get the benefits of a conventional deadlift, you'll be getting hamstrings, glutes, back. The problem with trap bar deadlifts is typically they turn into kind of a semi-squat. So obviously, you know, squats have their benefits for real athletes, but the trap bar deadlift is kind of a kiss me ass exercise in most realms. You can get up to incredibly gratuitous weights without a whole lot of benefit. So you get some quad activation, some glute activation. They're an easy exercise to do, and they're good for general training. And obviously we don't have the context of why Harry's doing them here, but in general, for most people, they are kind of what we'd call like a kiss me ass exercise. Basically, they're just kind of a little bit of nothing, a little bit of something.
I think they just invariably they fall between two stools, because you're getting something that like emulates like anterior quad or like anterior muscle activation similar to a front squat, but it doesn't make you that fatigued. It gets heavy weights, but they don't really stimulate the central nervous system in a way a heavy deadlift would, because they're not taxing on the spinal column in the same way. And you're like the amount of muscle recruitment isn't as high as if you were doing like a relatively heavy deadlift or a relatively heavy RDL. So like you can pull, like I remember doing a max trap bar deadlift after literally not touching a trap bar in 8 years or 6 years, and pulling like north of 280 and having almost no fatigue after it, you know. So like it is like the word gratuitous, Gerf is saying, is absolutely perfect for it. They're not heavy enough to make you really neurologically fatigued, so you get a good neurological adaptation, yet you're still having to load the bar excessively heavy.
So next up, we've been doing a series of hops, which obviously plyometric training, unweighted plyometric training would be the gold standard basically for sprinters like Harry. So one little thing you'll notice there, right, is you'll see his hands on his hips, and that's with good reason. So it's well established, you know, in the literature that hand movement adds a lot of momentum, and that's not a bad thing at all the time, right? But if you're primarily focusing on lower body movement for a plyometric session, keeping your hands on the hips, keep things a little bit more steady, and ensure that you're using the correct sequence of muscles for running, for example, or keep it primarily lower body focused for his plyometrics. He's using a series of hops there, and it's forcing him to kind of sequence things a little bit better, and hopefully a little bit faster, and hopefully would transfer over to his training a little bit better.
One thing about those kind of staged double box jump, Scurf, you know, that we've never talked about this, but the thing I don't like about that, and especially onto a sponge box, is all plyometric training is basically like stimulating a stretch shortening cycle, right? So you're looking to get like some lengthening of a muscle under load, and then that will have like a 2 + 2 = 3 effect, right? So it's not just like you squat down and pause and go. It's because you're loading those under, like there's higher levels of force, you get greater amount of force output. But when you stack a shorter box in front of a higher box, you're landing on the shorter box with less force than you would be landing if you just landed from the same height again. So the level of force that comes when you're landing is obviously due to the height and due to your weight coming down. So when you jump up onto a box, your absolute fall might only be 5 or 10 centimeters. So you get less loading on the legs, and then your stretch shortening cycle is activated less than if he had just done a broad jump into a box jump afterwards. So that's part of the reason. And then obviously if it's a foam box, because you get some compression under the legs, there's even less activation of the stretch shortening cycle. So that's why I wouldn't like those as much as just a standard broad jump or drop jump into a normal box jump.
So it actually looks like he's pairing these. He's doing a complex or a set with the
A
trap bar
superset.
deadlifts, right? So he seems to be doing straight trap bar deadlifts straight into the hops, right? So what that would be probably doing is looking for something called PAP or post activation potentiation. So that would be in general, you do a very heavy squat and then go straight into a jump, and it through a series of kind of mechanisms that we probably won't get into now, but essentially you will jump a little bit higher, like the immediate increase in performance directly after that heavier movement kind of transfers over. The problem with that is though is that no one's really established does that increase long-term performance, is that very, very temporary increase in performance. The issue, however, if he's trying to get PAP, is that the weight he's using on trap bar deadlifts is incredibly light. So typically you'd see them if you were doing like half squats into a half back squat, with weight into like a vertical jump. You'd see them use like 80% of their 1RM. And so we know Harry's incredibly strong. He's obviously we've seen him front squat 190. So a trap bar deadlift with probably 90 to 100 kilos is going to do fuck all for him basically in terms of like actual PAP activation or post potentiation activation. Realistically, he'd want to be deadlifting or ideally doing half squats with something like 150 or 160 kilos or more.
Okay, so on these, right, you've a power clean, like I think it's 70 kilos. I don't have my glasses on. But you've power cleans, and then it's basically like a lunge jump where you're jumping from left foot forward to right foot forward. And I really don't like those lunge jumps. Like, you can see why a sprinter needs to do something along these lines, right? Where it's really acute, discrete movements of the hip flexor, which is what you're really firing there to bring the rear leg forward. But it's happening under, like, it. Don't get me wrong, right? These movements don't have to happen under load. They don't have to happen where you're like under a shitload of tension. But when you're there and you're kind of in a standing split position and then you just snap your legs forward, there's no momentum to the movement. There's no great speed incentive to the movement. So like if Harry does that with 70% effort or Harry does that with 100% effort, nobody's going to really notice, right? Because if I do a 70 kilo power clean with 100% effort, I'll catch it at like almost fully standing up. If I do it with 80% effort, I'll catch it lower. If I do it with 50% effort, I might have to do a full clean to catch it. So there's really easy ways of seeing like effort and output on certain movements. But in those split squat ones, I don't see it being as kind of as applicable to sprinting. The other thing is there's loads of other really good movements you can do. So you'll see sprinters activating their hip flexors, like their anterior hip flexors, by going against a wall, like almost a push-up position against a wall where they're at a 45-degree angle and they're pulling their leg forward very quickly. You also see them doing loaded iterations of that where they might have a very, very light band or a cabled load, and they're doing like hip activation drills like that. To be honest, when they're doing them like this and they're pairing them with a power clean, which is already like a relatively quick power output, like it's speed, strength, movement, I don't see much of a use for those scissor kicks or scissoring or whatever you want to call it.
So that kind of touches on a point where a lot of elite athletes training is kind of, I suppose, case me asked the term we use for it. It's kind of it's neither here nor there. It's not really doing anything productive, nor is it doing anything too detrimental for someone as talented as Harry. So a lot of that training is just because athletes have a lot of time, they want to make sure they're doing as much training as possible to maximize in their performance and be as good as they possibly can be. And obviously they're elite athletes, so they're driven, so they want to do a lot of training. So sometimes it might be misguided depending on who's helping them. Again, I suppose always with these videos, you want to make sure we're not calling anyone out or taking things out of context. But looking at those in general, like Fitz said, I don't see a great reason for those. So moving on to the next section of this video, right, we have bench press plus kettlebell swings, right? So this is a thing that's I know Harry's been kind of not abused for before, but been kind of called out and for his excess of upper body weight, right? So there's a couple of things wrong. There's a couple of problems. There's kind of like two problems really with having a huge amount of upper body muscle. To be fair to Harry though, he probably can't help it. His genetics are obviously quality, so the fact that he's that much upper body muscle probably is hard. He's not going to just be able to lose that out of reason, right? But so when you're sprinting, ideally you'd have a lower center of mass. So for a lot of sports, that's useful. So you don't want a top heavy system. So too much weight kind of fucks up the balance and doesn't allow for the optimal use of your legs. So you want most of your weight lower down below the hip level so you can optimally sprint, I suppose, or it's a better balance and you have to spend less time correcting yourself. The other problem with that then as well is that just the more weight you have for your body to carry, it makes it harder for you to sprint or move as fast. So you'll see if you look at a lot of elite runners, for example, like for marathon runners, for example, to the extreme example, they're incredibly light. But again, because they need the least amount of muscle mass because it's heavy to carry essentially. So for summer sprinters, obviously we see sprinters incredibly jacked, but it looks like Harry is excessively jacked for sprinting. He actually mentions in one of his Instagram posts that he's losing weight, his body weight is down, but he's still feeling good. So it's probably an issue for him, especially as he gets older. It's probably, I think he's like 32 now. It's I know we're seeing a lot of more older athletes, old for athletes essentially. So it's probably something, it would make it easier for him to correct that if he was a little bit lighter and make him, as long as he doesn't lose in his leg mass. If he loses 5 kilo from his pecs, it's probably not going to have an impact on his performance.
It will have an impact on his topless Instagram post though, and he is in fucking sick shape. Like, oh my god, he like certain athletes, like we can tend to from time to time rag on athletes who are like out of shape or like they mightn't be doing enough additional training on top of their sport specific training. Harry is not one of those examples. Like, he's in exemplary condition for a professional athlete.
So then paired with that bench pressing is kettlebell swings. So what we don't see a lot of in Harry's training is a lot of like glute and hamstring training, which is like hip extensor training, which is the most important part of sprint training. So if you go by a lot of the research, hip extensors that are prime movers, I suppose, in sprinting, they're the most important muscle. So there's a couple of things around that though. So we don't see him, ideally you'd see, it might just we don't see in these trainings. So what you'd want to see is a lot of like RDL, stiff-legged deadlifts, directed hamstring training. So just increasing hamstring strength and power, we don't seem to see a lot of that. So from what we've seen there, kettlebells and to a certain extent, the power cleans or hang power cleans are useful for hamstrings. But all the rest of the stuff is primarily either quad focused or just kind of plyometric training. So the plyometric training makes sense as well. One thing on the quad training, right? So you want a quality balance between your hamstrings and your quads. So in kind of biomechanics, you have this phenomenon known as muscle coactivation or agonist coactivation. So essentially, basically your muscles either push or pull. They can't do both. So your hamstrings and quads either push or pull your leg or your hips. They extend and they move your legs through a range of motion or through your activity, whatever you're doing. So when your hamstrings, so the opposing muscle acts as a brake essentially for that muscle that's either pushing or pulling. So you need an equal balance. So if you had excessively strong hamstrings but very, very weak quads, you'd see an issue, either potentially an injury or a decrease in performance. So you want to see is ability for your quads to maintain a lot of force. So your quads would like decelerate or your hamstrings would decelerate depending on what part of the cycle of the movement you're going through. So you want to see equal strength between those because antagonist coactivation is something that could limit the speed of movement at which you're going through.
Yeah, the interesting thing about that hamstring training is, like, we were talking about this beforehand. We don't know, like, obviously we don't know what the training program is here. So we shouldn't be commenting on like, oh, this amount, like in quantities, we can't really talk about that. There is one thing though that, like, hamstring training isn't very sexy, right? Like doing single leg RDLs or doing Nordic hamstring curls isn't something you'd put up on Instagram all that much. And this is like the same thing where we see people were baffled by the amount of core work that Hayden had in his powerlifting program in one of our earlier videos. And people kept commenting saying like, oh my God, why are you doing so much core work? The reality of it is that like competitive powerlifters have to do that much core work, but they just don't put it up online. And it could be the very same thing here with the sprinting, that he could be doing Nordic hamstring curls till his fucking legs fall off and we'd never know about it because it's not something that people would regularly post on social media. It's not like an impressive lift. It's not the same as doing 170 kilos for a power clean.
But then the last kind of thing, which I think is definitely important to touch on for sprinters and speed training in terms of like running. So what we have is a very, very common tool use is weighted sprints, right? So there's a couple of things with this, right? So one, it looks like a lot of the research is saying, and it's kind of confirming that weighted sprints don't make you faster. And so like the idea for weighted sprints makes kind of sense in some regards, right? So if you think about you're kind of looking for like a super compensation, or you're looking for over speed training, kind of like, because if you put a limiting factor on yourself, so you have to work harder like you would with weight training. So if you try harder, your body compensates by building muscle or whatever. So the principles are kind of the same. So you would think that it makes sense on the surface that you do weighted sprints because it's harder for you to run faster. And if you try run faster and you're sprinting, you will then eventually run faster once you take the weight off. But it doesn't look like the research is lining up with that. So the problem with some of these S&C kind of reaction videos we do, right, is that sometimes people get kind of annoyed at us when we kind of mention research, and people are like, bro, you're not out here in the trenches, even though we do train a lot of athletes. There's kind of a thing with S&C, all science in particular. It's when science doesn't line up with the culture, people don't ever reject their culture, they reject the science rather than rejecting their culture and just taking an objective look at what's happening. So if a lot of people will have done weighted sprints and they're like, no, see, you don't understand, right? But if you look at objectively, you shouldn't be attached to any method training. If someone came along and told me that actually back squats don't make you better at snatching as much as doing scissor kicks with a weighted dumbbell on your foot, I'd be like, grand, if that's proven, then I would do that. Like, that's how you need to be about training. So if, for example, you feel kind of a little bit maliciously attacked that we've said weighted sprints don't seem to make you faster at sprinting, just take a second, leave an angry comment, because it's great for the algorithm for us, but just don't dislike the video. Just leave that angry comment and then argue with other people if you want. But it doesn't really look like that. So it kind of comes back to that some of the I think Fitz is going to touch a little bit on some of the reasons why weighted sprints probably don't make you better at sprinting and why it's probably lining up with the research.
Yeah, look, when you look at 100 meters as an event, right, as a sport in itself, 100 meters aren't won by the people who can run the fastest, right, which sounds fucking stupid. They're not run by just the person who reaches the top speed. It's not an event of my top speed is more than your top speed, even though that's, for the layperson looking on, that's what the sport appears to be. The sport of 100 meters, in essence, is a sport of who can reach a requisite top speed and then who can hold on to that top speed the longest. So if you look at the acceleration curves, you're talking by the time the first 60 meters is over, they've reached their peak velocity already. A lot of them will have reached it a long time ago. And then it's talking about a decay of that peak velocity. So by the time they cross the finish line, they are going significantly slower than what their peak speed is. And the peak speed for most of, probably the top 100 sprinters in the world, isn't going to be hugely different. The classic case of this is Usain Bolt. When you watch him racing, most of them will get out of the blocks faster than him, and most of them will reach a top speed faster than Usain will. He just maintains his top speed so much better than everybody else. That comes down to a host of factors. One of the factors being his stride length. But it's important to note that when you look at aspects of sprint training, like the weighted sprints, people really focus on their acceleration work. They really focus on their reaction work. They really focus on the first 20 meters of the sprint, but they may not be focusing on the maintenance of the high velocity phase. And like when you look at the vast majority of retroactive studies where they look at sprint results, people win the 100-meter sprint event by maintaining their top speed for longer than other people's. It's not about getting to a top speed. Now, having said all of that, right, I'm not going to be able to reach the top speed. Owen isn't going to be able to reach the top speed. There's not 100 people in every village in the world that can reach that top speed. You have to have the top speed and you have to train to get to that top speed. But most of the people who are getting to Olympic level sprinting can reach that maximum velocity. They just can't hold on to it as well as the people who are going to come first, second, and third.
So I think that's it. So I hope you enjoyed that. If there's anything you particularly found useful or anything you found interesting or didn't know about before, then let us know in the comments. If there's some other sport you want to see after, something you want to do, so people frequently send us different things, then please leave them in the comments and we'll check it out. If there's a particular athlete or sport, just let us know. If you are an athlete yourself and you're looking to increase your strength, we've got a whole host of different things for you. So if you go to seekerstrength.com, we've got a back squat only cycle, a press only cycle, a deadlift only cycle. We've got off-season athletes programs. So we've got 8 weeks of that. It's a great program to do. If you're a real athlete, as we term them, so someone doing non-strength based sports or CrossFit, Dara takes a lot of one-to-ones. So he's got like jiu-jitsu athletes, he's got rugby players, he's got a whole host of different people. If you're looking for consultancy as an athlete, if you just need some advice, we sit down and talk to people, or if you're in your gym or if you have a team, we can help you out there. So seekstrength.com for all that useful stuff. If you could please subscribe and like and leave a comment, that all helps the algorithm, and we really appreciate it.